9 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. We're going to have Ms. Jackson lead us in the prayer and the pledge.
Our most Heavenly Father, thank you for the wonderful day that you've planned for us, and help us to carry out what your wants and needs are for our city and for ourselves. Be with us, the commission, today as we make decisions that will affect all of our citizens and residents in our area. Help us to make good, informed decisions to help the growth of our city. Thank you for letting us be born in the most wonderful nation, most powerful state, and wonderful city that we live in, and just help us to maintain all that. In your most holy name I pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, one and indivisible.
The consent agenda. The Planning Commission may request for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for presentation and public comment. Otherwise, the consent agenda will be considered in one vote. Consideration of, well, anyone like to make a motion?
We're doing it in one motion, Travis?
I'm assuming we can do it in one motion.
Okay. I make a motion to approve consent.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Regular agenda. Subdivision plats. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. Baker Ranch, Section 3A. The request for approval of a final plat, Baker Ranch, Section 3A, being 3.828 acres of land outside of a 30.194 acre tract generally located west of the intersection of Blair Lane and Tesla Lane.
Good morning, Shelley Pascal, planner. I am going to, if it's okay with you, if you want to take 3A and 3B together, we will need two separate motions, but the properties are right beside each other.
Okay. You want me to read 3B as well? Request for approval of a final plat, Baker Ranch, Section 3B, being 4.751 acres of land and being 3.995 acres of land out of a 30.194 acre tract generally located west of the intersection of Caroline Lane and Tesla Lane.
The Section 3A, as you stated, is 3.828 acres. It is currently vacant. They're proposing 18 new lots, and it is currently zoned RS1. The future land use is neighborhood. It is in the Country Club neighborhood. As is 3B, and as you can see, it's just directly north of 3A. It is also zoned RS1. It's neighborhood and in the Country Club neighborhood. I wanted to show you the preliminary plat that was approved in 2006. This pink area is A, 3A, and then there's 3B up here. This is the proposed final plat for 3A, and then the proposed final plat for 3B. This is looking down Blair Lane. And for Section 3B, this is looking down Caroline Lane. It does conform with the preliminary plat approved by the Planning Commission in 2006. And the comprehensive plan calls for both to be neighborhood with low-density residential is the primary use in this area. Staff recommendation for 3A. We do recommend approval to the, with these conditions, a copy of the tax cert, prepare, submit, and install Blair Lane, or seek a variance, submit a drainage plan, prepare plans for a fire hydrant, also what the water and sewer, prepare plans for those, and obtain an easement and right to the crossing of the railroad tracks for a secondary access. Section 3B, same sign, tax cert, install Caroline Lane this time, submit a drainage plan, and submit for a fire hydrant, also for water and sewer, and also for a second access across the railroad. Any questions?
I have a couple. Can you show us where the railroad is? Okay. And do you have a larger map of this area? An aerial? Okay. Got it. All right. Anyone else have questions for the staff? All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please state your name before you start.
Good morning, Russell Gully with SKG Engineering. We're in agreement with all the conditions of approval for both sections 3A and 3B, but would like to kind of expand and clarify condition 7 on both 3A and 3B, kind of regarding the fire apparatus access easement. As the property sits now in this general vicinity, I wish we had one that kind of expanded and showed the greater area of kind of beyond this a little bit, and I have some maps I can hand out to you. But currently, as the property sits with Twin Mountain Drive, there's a lot of residences on a single access point, if you will, be at Twin Mountain Drive. And so this condition 7 comes into play because with the addition of these lots, we'll be over for a single access point, we'll be over the 165 residences that are allowed to be on a single access point, kind of under this configuration. Now, what's going to happen and can change things is there's Trinity West Section 3 Merrick Street that was approved some time back. It's actually now started, the developer on that has started construction of that. And so let me I've got a few copies here. Let me hand these out right quick.
Russell.
So you'll see on there's some areas that's kind of highlighted and surrounded in yellow and we've got 126 lots there. And then an area kind of to the south in orange, we have 37 lots there. And so that total is 163. And that would be what we're going to have on a single access point once Merrick is in place. And so once Merrick is installed, that opens up a secondary access point back to southwest. And so Twin Mountain Drive is, for this entire length, is no longer the single access point, and the number of the lot count changes. So currently, as of today, without the plat of Trinity West Section 3 being recorded, yes, we have an issue with these Section 3A and 3B being over the 165 lot count. But what we would like to kind of have for the record and for approval is that if and when Merrick goes in, we plan or would expect that that's going to be installed and complete and recorded before our plat is ready for recording. So that would come in, and now our count is below the 165, and this secondary fire apparatus access route across the railroad track is no longer required for 3A and 3B. It potentially will be required if we keep going and developing more of this area in the future. We're gonna get this route, because we need this segment now. We're gonna have it in place on this plat, but there's gonna be some work to be done with TxDOT, Texas Pacifico, the city, the landowner across the other side that ties into Dominion, to kind of be able to get this whole secondary access route in play and completed. So we'd like some sort of revision or comment or something added to Section 7, or to Condition 7, that would kind of recognize that if Merrick Street is duly recorded in a dedicated street prior to 3A and 3B being recorded, then this condition is pretty much moot because we're below the 165, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think we can come up with some wording to basically say if other development reduces this below the 165, then that's not going to be necessary at that time.
Why couldn't you just say, as long as it meets that requirement at the time that they're?
We could. I mean, that.
You could, the planning commission could
Yeah.
just add that to
No, I'm
it.
just-
No, I think we would be comfortable with that wording. It's just a matter of coming up with the wording, but yes, if
Right.
if at the
Instead
time
of tying it to Merrick, there could be other circumstances that benefit you in that area. I'm just,
sure, I
down
mean,
the, we're talking years down the road.
Oh, yeah,
here.
the city's gonna finish Twin Mountain Drive back around. I know they're
Something
working
else
on
could
that.
change and could
Yes.
help you, is what I'm
Right.
saying.
Sure, yes, absolutely.
So
yes.
as long as the 165 is
Right.
I
met,
think a simple way might be to just say compliance with that section of the fire code. However that's done, whether it's an easement, whether it's another connection, whether it's Twin Mountain.
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So what section of the fire code is it?
Appendix D, 107.1.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to answer any other questions. Thank you for your time and staff for this. This was actually, it was approved as Section 3 in 2014 or 15. The developer, it expired. The developer never did anything. The market kind of went down.
Right.
Lot demands back up, so they're back looking.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Russell. Anyone else have public comment? All right, I'm going to close public comment. Open it up for folks up here. If anyone has questions or comments or wish to make a motion.
I make the motion to approve and to clarify Condition 7 that as long as it's compliant with the Fire Code 107.1.
Okay? John, is that sufficient for you guys?
Yes, and just for the record, I could read what I'm proposing as the revised condition.
Okay.
To make sure that sounds okay with you, I would just revise it to say, prior to plat recordation, show compliance with the 2015 International Fire Code Appendix D, Section D 107.1, as amended.
I make the motion.
Okay. We're going to make the motion, taking John's language. Anyone?
And was that a motion on both cases, or both
Yes.
sections?
On Baker Ranch Section 3A, Baker Ranch Section 3B.
Okay, we have two separate motions to approve and 2 seconds. So all in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? All right, 6-0. Country Club West Estates. Public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of a final plat of Country Club West Estates Section 1 and a variance from Chapter 103A2 of the Land Development Subdivision Ordinance to maintain a minimum paving width of 24 feet and no curb and gutter for Country Club Road, an urban major collector street, being 6.254 acres located 1,700 feet west of the intersection of Hilton Head Boulevard and Country Club Road.
Good morning, members. Sherry Bailey, Principal Planner. The applicant in this case has requested a final plat for this 6.254 acres for Country Club West Estates. It is one residential lot. It's in District 1. It's Country Club neighborhood, and it does front on Country Club Road. The applicant bought this piece of property. It was over the 5 acres, and the applicant believed that they did not originally have to plat, but because they needed a variance on the paving width, which you will see in just a moment, they did have to plat, and that's why we're bringing it forward to you. You can see on the left the general location of this piece of property. And you can also see on the right that it is ranch and estate zoning. We believe that this piece of property is in conformity with the comprehensive plan in that the subject property has both neighborhood center and a rural designation, and therefore it acts as a buffer between the development of single family on the east and what in the future will be commercial on the west. We also believe it's in conformity with the intent and purpose statements. It will follow current pattern of development, which is C, and ensure continuation of the established record of recorded plats available for public review, which is K. Variance requested in this case is the applicant is asking for a 1-foot paving variance in order to meet the city standard for this road designation. And we believe that staff is supporting that in that granting this variance will not be detrimental to public health and safety. This is a road that was built by the city. It does have a header curb on it, and it was built at that time to a standard that does not necessarily meet our existing standard, and it has that 1-foot paving differential, which is being met by the variance. In condition 2, conditions unique to this property in question, this area is zoned R&E and neighborhood center, and it will on the future land use. And again, when the city built the road, it did not build to the minimum paving width that we needed. And number 3, if the letter of these regulations was carried out, it would result in a particular hardship. Staff believes the existing street along Country Club Road will service the area satisfactory. And the variance will not vary the ordinance provisions. In this case, the plat will not dramatically increase the development of this area or add significant new traffic. It is a single-family lot. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the final plat of Country Club West Estates, Section 1, including the approval of the variance request, subject to 4 conditions of approval. And those conditions are a copy of the tax certification, fire hydrants as being required by the fire code. Tom Green County Environmental Health will need to approve the septic system out there. And then if you approve the variance, the 4th condition goes away. Otherwise, it would require that additional pavement. Are there any questions?
Is the condition on the Tom Green County Environmental Health what would be ordinary for
Yes.
anyone that's
It is,
not on city
exactly.
septic?
On
Okay.
septic, yes.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for the staff? All right, thank you, Cherry. I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Good morning, Russell with SKG. Just a side note, we still believe that this 5-acre exemption should apply. We're not here to argue that today. We don't want this to create a precedent. We believe the city ordinances are somewhat vague, kind of on that whole terminology there. So, but the developer, builder wants to get his building permit, so here we go, going through the process. We would request that you would please approve the variance on the 1-foot paving width as staff has supported, so we thank them for that support. We would like to see if you could amend item 3. This states prior to plat recordation for the plans and the fire hydrant installation. We've talked to Ross Coleman and the fire department about this. They're okay with deferring that. The builder developer is just trying to kind of get started on a single family residential home out there. So you know, this is just kind of an extra cost impact. They're working it in, but they're going to do it. And so any verbiage that you could have that would allow us to get this plat recorded, because that's kind of the one substantial financial obligation and time obligation to get the plans approved and get the fire hydrant installed, that continues to delay his building process. He was off and going, and then he's now on hold. And so any help that you could throw our way on that, and if you need to put in there something as approved or approved by the fire marshal, so that since he's not here to concur with that he would get that ability to concur on that. So be happy to answer any questions.
So just to clarify, Russell, you want us to remove the requirement for a fire hydrant or put the requirement of that on the fire marshal's office? What are you asking for specifically?
Yeah, I wasn't very clear. Asking if you could, in some cases, what we've done in the past is we've deferred an obligation like this to the certificate of occupancy on the building, so that they can't get, kind of like that we do on sidewalks. You can't get your building C of O until the sidewalk's installed. So we want to say for this one, they can't get the building C of O until that fire hydrant is installed. So that's kind of what we're specific, not to get rid of it. We'll do it, just to defer it to some, and we believe that the building C of O is really a good point to defer that to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell.
And just for the record, the staff is supportive of that.
Okay.
And
I was going to say, I
we've-
wouldn't think you'd object. The fire marshal's got to give a CO
And we've
approval
gotten
anyway.
word from the
So-
fire marshal's office as well, and they're comfortable with that.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on this case? Would please come forward. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Anyone have questions up here or wish to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve as requested, with items 2 and 3 being deferred items until the certificate of occupation is obtained.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. You want to ask Russell?
Lance Overstreet Engineering Services. Having spoken with the county on numerous other septic tanks, we cannot defer the septic tank until occupancy. That would have to be deferred to prior to issuing a building permit, because they have to see the location of that and what its orientation is before that site plan can be approved and the permit can be approved. But we would be in support of deferring that until the permitting process.
We're not asking for a deferral of item 1 on the septic suitability study. That's I think that's what,
Mainly
Two and three.
well, I guess these conditions and those conditions don't line,
different.
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm totally,
So this one,
totally confused.
this one
Part of
is,
why I asked for a clarification, because you're talking about item
Yeah,
three.
I'm sorry, I was
two.
looking at what was presented, and that's, okay.
so we're just talking about condition number 2, I believe, with the fire hydrants, deferring it until the certificate of occupancy. No other changes, correct?
Yeah, and then just approval of, on here, item 4, the variance. But no other changes, yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries.
We have to get our numbers together. Okay, I would like to withdraw what I had put out there and redo it. So, I'd like to approve as presented with the exception of the fire hydrants being deferred.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve as presented with a deferral of the fire hydrant requirement to the certificate of occupancy. That includes the approval of the variance on 10.3B2, 10.3A2. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. First replat of Tract 54, Section 1, Fuessel Farm Tracts. A request for approval of a first replat of Tract 54, Section 1, Fuessel Farm Tracts comprising 2.996 acres generally located west of Lorraine Lane between Terry Trail and Hubert Road in the city's ETJ.
Morning, Planning Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Principal Planner. Our next case is a first replat of Tract 54, Section 1, Fuessel Farm Tract Estates. The property is in our extraterritorial jurisdiction, so the city limits line is west of this line, and then east of this, original subdivision has already been platted, and so the applicant wants to take this one property and cut it into 2 pieces. The current property, I guess what the corner clips is, it was originally platted as 3 acres. It was surveyed as 2.996. So each, the remaining tract, which has a home on it to the north, and the new tract to the south are both roughly 1.5 acres each. This is the proposed final plat. As mentioned, it is in the ETJ, so there's no zoning on it. If it ever came into the city limits in the future, we probably zoned it RS1, or even if we left it, say, R&E in that area, it would comply with those standards. It's more than an acre. Both are 177 feet of frontage onto Terry Trail, and then the side yards are approximately 300 feet in depth on each side. So the new tract to the north would be 1.494 acres, Tract 54B on the rendering, and to the south would be 1.502 acres. It's noted, Planning Division, I had contacted the property owner as well who made the request, and their consultant, SKG Engineering. We had found some deed restrictions, and we just wanted them to be aware of that. The deed restrictions, as I read them, unless you own at least 2 adjacent lots at that time, the deed restrictions say you can't subdivide further. They also talk about dwelling types and other things. So from my reading of it, they may not meet the deed restrictions. However, just to clarify, the city doesn't enforce those. And so my understanding is we move forward as presented, and we will be recommending approval as long as it meets the subdivision ordinance conditions, which we believe that it does. So we'll go over that now. The original plat was done in 1998. A lot of these lots, I calculated 8 of the lots in the subdivision were already platted at 1.5 acres, so this would be consistent with that. 53, which the owner, I believe, had owned at the time in 2008, had already did the same thing and went to Planning Commission and got the approval. There were a couple other lots here that were subdivided as well that are within 1.5 acres, were all done in the 2000s. So that's where we stand today. Staff recommends approval based on the following. We believe that the plat does conform with the city's comprehensive plan. The replat, the future designation of neighborhood, allows a mix of different housing types, including single-family homes, and that's what this would allow. The replat is consistent, as mentioned, with the size and shape of the other 8 other lots, which are roughly around the same size, 1.5 acres in that subdivision. We also believe it conforms with the intent of purpose statements. And the 3 we highlighted, the existing right-of-ways and streets already meet the minimum standards for a rural road, so in the ETJ. So their street paving on Terry and the side street are 30 feet wide with 60-foot right-of-way, so that hasn't changed. So there's absolutely no change other than the lot just being one lot into 2. Meet the minimum dimensions of RS1 or RNE, and would ensure proper land development in the ETJ. So if, like I said, if it ever does get a voluntary annexation by those neighbors in the future, which is unlikely to happen, but even if it did, it would comply with zoning. 50 notices were mailed out. There was 1 in favor from the property owner. There's a second 1 in favor from an adjacent, a surrounding owner I passed out. I just got that this morning. And then the 3 in opposition you can see here, 9, 11, and 15. Staff recommends approval of the first replat of Tract 54, Section 1, Fuessel Farm Tract, subject to 3 conditions of approval as outlined in your staff report. So a copy of the tax certification, a suitability study, and site plan to the county environmental health, showing their septic systems and their water source. In this case, will be a private well. And 3, no fire hydrants are provided until water service is extended to within 200 feet of the property. And again, that probably won't happen for many years to come just because it's still in the ETJ. So that concludes staff's presentation. Any questions or comments?
Is there underlining zoning in place for this tract?
There is not. It was in the annexation area, I think, mid-range, but just due to the new state requirements and everything, that probably won't happen anytime soon. So there's no zoning as of today.
Okay.
There's some concern about mobile homes. With single-family homes, you can't have mobile homes.
If there was applicable zoning, correct. And I think the way I read the deed restrictions, it says no, it doesn't say no, it doesn't specify what single-family homes. It says no prefab metal buildings. And so if most mobile homes, I believe, are prefab, so they probably wouldn't be allowed. But again, we don't enforce deed restrictions. And so if somebody was to come in the ETJ and want to put a mobile home there, as far as I know, we wouldn't be able to stop that.
Does the property have to be zoned in order to be developed?
No, it does not.
Since it's outside the city limits, our zoning rules don't apply, and that's one of the advantages of being in the city is there are those protections from zoning.
Right.
In the county, there's lesser protections for different types of development like that.
So there is no zoning, therefore there is no restriction.
There's no restriction as far as the city's concerned.
From the city's concerned,
Correct.
as far as what could be developed there. Okay. Anyone else have questions? All right, we're going to open it up for public comment. If you wish to speak on this case, please state your name before you start.
Morning, the Commission. Herb with SKG Engineering. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. I think the situation is we have one possibly ill-informed neighbor that thinks they might be doing mobile homes. Actually, the owner is here today. They have a floor plan and a builder for a site-built house on the new tract, and she actually owned the tract to the east of there and divided that into 2 1.5-acre tracts, just like she's doing on this one. So.
Okay. Wonderful.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else wish to speak on this case, please come forward.
My name is David Ramirez. I'm Tract 61, a resident. And first of all, I don't accept or agree with what she's doing. We have restrictions there. When I first bought there, we had restrictions. The owner of the, I guess you could say the subdivision, gave us restrictions and gave everybody restrictions to abide. And we all abide. And like I said, she subdivided one property of hers that she bought between her and her husband without anybody knowing she subdivided it. So we had no proof or whatever to argue about or whatever. So that's a bygone. So, and now she's trying to subdivide her own lot. And first of all, our restrictions does say that are supposed to be one living I guess you could say one living quarter
Per tract.
per tract.
Okay.
But she has
Or per
two,
lot.
right now she has two in her lot, her tract or lot, whatever you want to call it. And she has that since day one, she first bought that house. Okay. So.
This is the lot next to the house that
Yes,
she
correct.
lives in? Is that
Yes,
correct?
correct. She's renting or whatever she's doing there at the barn. First of all, in the future, the first owner that used to own that house built that barn, and he lived there for temporary to build a house. He moved out, and he moved his house. So afterwards, he sold the house to Miss Love. So, well, they moved in, and then they started renting that barn. People been living there since day one, since she's been living there. So we don't agree about it, but what else can we do? I mean, that's one thing she done, and then she starts try to subdivide her property. So I just don't agree. And yesterday I was talking to a resident. I was asking that they received the letter from the city. She drove up yesterday. I'm not sure I was supposed to be saying this or whatever, but she drove up yesterday, and she confronted us that what she's trying to do. And she's saying she's going to go by the restriction, this and that we have in this subdivision. So I said, well, if you're going by by the restrictions, why are you subdividing? That's our restriction. Then her response was, well, everybody's doing it now. Why not me? So, well, just because everybody's doing it, that means you got to do it too. And first of all, she's a realtor. She should go by the law or the restrictions, or all the restrictions that it has. I don't know what else today say, but, there's a lot of people around the subdivision not agreeing about it, but I said, well, y'all need to do something about it because this place is going to go down the hill. And first of all, I don't agree that the commission, what you call it, the commissioner for audits, sorry. My tongue got county commissioner not helping that out. The first thing they said, they're not going to help us out, not even give it 2 cents worth. They should at least say something. And I'm not sure how much. The reason why I moved down there is so I don't have to be involved with the city. And now y'all getting involved with us down there. It's okay, I guess. If stuff gets done like the street and the sidewalk that we've been complaining about that it needs to be done. Well, who's going to be doing it? Not y'all, not this county. Who's going to be doing it? So, yeah, that's what we say, Yeah, just like that. That's what we're saying. But, hey, we're patient down there, But like I said, it's not right. If I were doing it, subdivide my property, boy, y'all be all over me too. Probably, because I'm not thinking about subdividing my property because I like to go by the restrictions. So, but like I said, I just don't agree, and I hope y'all vote to, do the right thing, I guess.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wish to speak on this case? So Jeff, if this is a deed restriction issue, what recourse does the neighborhood have for enforcing the deed restriction?
We do have one of our attorneys here, but as I've been told in the past, that they would just have to seek legal recourse outside on their own. That's right.
That's a big expense.
Yeah, it's a civil matter between the parties subject to those restrictions. I mean, the city doesn't have any standing. Even if it were to try and enforce those, we'd get thrown out of court because we're not a party to it, so.
Okay.
I guess that's one of the challenges. That's the
Yeah.
you're allowed to not abide by all the city rules if you live outside the city, but you also don't have the protection of the city. I mean, I'm not understanding in a way why we're even reviewing this, but I mean, we don't have jurisdiction, do we?
Yes, we do.
We do have jurisdiction over the subdivision of property, but we only review the subdivision of property under our subdivision rules, which this meets. We don't have any say, as they said, on deed restrictions that might be more restrictive than the city rules.
Gotcha.
Can we put zoning on it as a condition for the plat?
No, we only have zoning authority within the city limits, and since this is outside the city limits, we don't have
zoning.
that authority.
No authority. All right. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak on public comment? All right, I'm going to close public comment. This is a tough case, guys. It's I know we're not in the legal business, but it's a tough burden to ask residents to have to go seek legal remedies through our judicial system to enforce restrictions within a neighborhood. You put up the conditions for approval, please. Anyone up here have other comments or wish to make a motion?
I understand their challenges, their frustration, but I live in the back end of, I live on the north end of town, and I'm right on the edge of the city limits. And right across the street, they couldn't do anything about the stuff that was going on over there because it's outside the city limits. So that's just the has to be annexed, and then we can go through all this, but it's just part of it.
All right.
I feel their pain, and I understand, but it is what it is. It's kind of have to go a different route about fighting it.
Right.
And it's not fun or easy, but.
I understand. All right, does anyone wish to make a motion?
Okay, so according to our authority with what we have, it meets all of the criteria for the approval.
Yes.
Is that correct, Jeff? Okay. We do not have authority over any deed restriction, whether it's inside the city or in the county itself. We don't have any authority over that. That is something that has to be done by the residents.
Correct.
With that being said, I would make a motion to accept it as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, 6-0. First replat of Lot 5, Section 3, Murr Way Incorporated, addition, consolidated. A request for the approval of a replat of Murr Way Incorporated, addition, consolidated, Lot 5, Section 3, located at 4248 Sherwood Way.
Shelley Pascal. This is the first replat within Section 5. Excuse me. The current zoning is PD with underlying CG zoning. It is 5.563 acres. The flu does call for it to be commercial. It is in DeWitt's district, and it's within the neighborhood Bluffs. And they are proposing to create 2 lots out of the previously 1 large lot. It would be subdivided here. The future land use does call for it to be commercial, and the current zoning is a PD with a general commercial. I do want to point out that this piece of property does have a future bike path through it. It's the green dotted line here, and it does run along the Red Arroyo. Here's a couple of pictures of the subject property. Credit World is closer to Sherwood Way, and then the inn is closer to the rear of the property. The first picture is looking along Sherwood Way towards southwest. Yes. And then the second picture here, I just wanted to illustrate the beaten path here. As you can see that pedestrians do use that area quite a bit. We do recommend approval from staff. They are creating 2 separate lots out of Tract 5. 5A is proposed to be 3.305 acres, and 5B is 2.258 acres. As I did state, there is a future back trail being proposed along the west property line of this property. And the comprehensive plan does call for it to be commercial, and it is primarily commercial within this area. We do recommend approval of the first replat of Section 5, first replat of Lot 5, Section 3 Merway with 3 conditions. A copy of the tax cert, prepare and submit plans for approval illustrating the installation of sidewalks, and just a correction on the actual plat itself saying that the planning commission approval versus, I think it says city staff, planning director. So it just needs to change that block.
Okay.
Questions?
Why is it a PD?
It was approved for the inn, the
motel?
yes.
Okay.
Multifamily.
Or is it apartments? What is it?
Yeah.
Yes, it's apartments, and we
Apartments.
don't, our zoning ordinance doesn't allow apartments in commercial zoning.
Okay.
And so the PD allowed both commercial and apartments on the same lot.
Okay. Anyone have questions? All right, thank you. We're going to open it up for public comment.
Morning again, Herb with SKG Engineering. This one's a lot more fun than the last one. Yeah, that one. And I would like to talk about the sidewalk situation. We did have planning department staff and engineering staff meet us out there on the site to take a look at this, and we definitely appreciate them doing that because this is an unusual situation with the sidewalk. If you can see the back of the curb here, and typically, according to the city specs, along a major thoroughfare, you have, I believe, a 6-foot setback from the back of the curb to where the sidewalk begins, and then you have a 5-foot sidewalk, which would put the 6-foot setback here and a 5-foot sidewalk here. As you can see, this ditch is about 5 foot deep. The engineering personnel out there on the site understood that this was a very unusual situation and kind of agreed that they could probably do a variance to the standards for the sidewalk. Since this is a TxDOT controlled highway and that is in their right of way, TxDOT is going to be approving the sidewalk. Plans or not, whatever happens in that situation. As you can see, when you get up here to the guardrail, right here, that is where the bridge that goes across the Red Arroyo is, and unfortunately, this is a really bad situation. You can tell people have been walking on it, and we've seen people walk along there. When they get to the guardrail, there is no sidewalk across that bridge, across the Red Arroyo. So it's about this wide between the guardrail and the back of the curb, so you got people squeezing by, and there's nothing we can do about that. Hopefully someday they'll widen that bridge and give us a sidewalk that we can utilize. It's bad enough for pedestrian traffic. Any kind of handicap traffic, I don't know what they would do. If they got over the curb in the wheelchair, they would be, sitting ducks in Sherwood Way traffic. But that being said, and I think Lance is here, if he might want to address it, we will propose a sidewalk to the back of the curb and present that to the engineering department. As I understand it, they will then present that to TxDOT for their approval. There is the possibility that TxDOT might say, we don't want a sidewalk here. It's dangerous, it's a bad situation. And we would like to have that option if that result is forthcoming from TxDOT in their discussion with the engineering department. So, but I'd like to get Lance's input because we hadn't actually discussed that possibility. But I could answer any other questions you might have on it.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Lance Overstreet Engineering Services. Actually, I met with TxDOT regarding some other projects, and this one did come up. And I don't know if you have seen, about a month ago, there was a very large contingent of individuals that were going around town and looking at all the intersections that are TxDOT controlled. TxDOT actually has an initiative and a project that's going to be coming up in the next year or two, to where they're going to put in sidewalks throughout town in all of their major thoroughfares. This particular area is actually going to be having a pedestrian bridge. Initially, it was only going to be on the south side, connecting Buffalo Wild Wings to the Red Arroyo Trail. But in those discussions that I had with them this last week, they are now going to add a pedestrian bridge on both sides, so that way it will actually connect from the intersection all the way up to the sidewalk that is being proposed here. And I did let them know that the sidewalk bid would be up against the curb. They were okay with that. And what they are asking is that whenever we have those drawings available for this sidewalk, that I get that to them so they can actually make their bridge connect to this sidewalk. And so essentially what that would do is it set the stage for the future trail as well. And so there'll be a pedestrian bridge on both sides of this that would connect everything up all the way to the intersection, the Red Arroyo Trail, and the future trail. And that is a new development that I just met on Thursday. So.
Great. Thank you.
I think that's very good news. Thanks, Lance. That sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak on this case? A closed public comment. Anyone want to make a motion?
So on number 2, it would be prepare and submit the plans for approval to TxDOT. Correct?
It would still be to the city, and we would coordinate with TxDOT.
Okay. This does not, with TxDOT's approval, since it is their thoroughfare, if they deny that, even though Mr. Overstreet just met with them and verbally has approval, if we have that in there, what happens? We leave it as is.
I guess if they deny it, right?
Deny it, what happens?
Then if they deny it, then we're going to wind up with 3/4 of a sidewalk to nowhere, right? Basically.
We could add subject to TxDOT approval to this
Yeah, I would
condition,
feel
so
more
that if they
comfortable with
deny
that.
it, we can't make them build a sidewalk that
Right.
TxDOT's saying they can't build.
Exactly. I wouldn't want them to be doing things for no reason, especially if what he says is going to come to fruition. That's great. But if that doesn't, and that sidewalk gets built up until the guardrail, then it's really kind of pointless. So whatever you think is best, in my opinion.
We need to change the verbiage or something on that.
If we just add the word subject to TxDOT approval in there, that would cover us.
And that will mean that TxDOT is the only one that can approve it, not the landowner, not the property owner. I don't want the, what we're wanting right now, what we're asking for right now is for the owner to install sidewalks, prepare and submit plans for approval for the owner to do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if we put with TxDOT, we still want to take the owner out of that equation.
No, the owner would still install the sidewalks, but only if TxDOT approves them.
Okay,
Only if text.
You have to
Okay.
prepare and submit.
okay.
In other words, if TxDOT backs
'Cause I'm-
out, then
The way I was reading it would be if TxDOT backs out, then the owner does the
don't have to
sidewalk
do
to
it.
nowhere. It's the way I
Exactly. So we
was
wanna make sure
reading
they don't have
that.
to do 'em.
Yes.
It's contingent upon
Okay.
that plan that Lance went over going
Yes.
forward.
Okay,
Well, let me clarify. I think it's contingent on TxDOT approving the sidewalk within their right-of-way, is what our recommendation would be.
Shouldn't have replotted it.
What I wouldn't want to see us do is say no sidewalk, because there's very likely that they will build their sidewalk that won't connect until TxDOT does their plan, which, as Lance said, could be a year or two. But the alternative is TxDOT builds a bridge that then doesn't connect anywhere. And that's the way sidewalks work. You build them one piece at a time, and it sometimes takes time for them to add up to a system.
Right, I got you.
And so I think as long as TxDOT's okay with the sidewalk in their right-of-way, we would require this owner to build it.
Wouldn't you have to have TxDOT's approval to build in their right-of-way in the first place?
Yes, and so the subject to TxDOT approval basically says if they say no,
The same.
then they don't have to build it.
Okay. Okay.
I think the conditions read okay, and we'll work with Lance on this, and what I can envision is for us to run the sidewalk up there and leave it a little bit short, so TxDOT, depending on which way
Figure out
they
how they wanna
do
do
their
it.
pedestrian bridge, and a lot of times they'll just outrigger them to the existing bridge itself, and that'll give them room to work the transition over to their pedestrian bridge, and I think engineering will be amiable with that, so.
Okay. So you're good with the conditions like they are?
I think everybody understands what the end result should be on this, and we're good with that.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
okay, I would like to make a motion to approve, but I still want TxDOT approval put in number 2 instead of just for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6-0. Rezoning. City Council has final authority for approval of rezonings. Amendment to PD 18-03 Golden Antlers Corp. Public hearing and consideration of rezoning from the single-family residential zoning district to the planned development zoning district to expand the existing PD 18-03 boundary to allow for uses permitted in the general commercial zoning district with a principal use of campground recreation vehicle park being 40.63 acres located at 2680, 2698 Camper Road.
Morning again, Jeff Fisher, Principal Planner. This is an amendment to plan development you all approved last year, PD 1803. So last year you had approved this area in here for an RV park, an existing RV park. And so the applicant, the new applicant has come in and wants to expand that into this area here. And there's a city lease for most of this area in here. And so what they want to do is basically expand, add more RV spaces and a few other things I'll go over in a minute. The total PD acreage is 40.63 acres. The addressing is 2680 and 2698 Camper Road in the Nasworthy neighborhood. So the existing PD was 16.36 acres. It includes RVs, boat docks, the Tula Princess, and a bunch of other recreational amenities. This is the proposed expansion area. So it in addition to this area to the east, there's also a smaller area in here at the bottom, about 3 acres, that will be included in that as well. The future land use is open space, and the zoning is PD 1801 for Phase 1. The expansion is still RS1, so the PD expansion will allow them to continue that as well as adding some other uses already recognized. The underlying zoning is CG, and so we'll go over those uses in a minute. So this is looking at the existing gates as you come in, the entrance to the existing PD. So we put up the signs before the entrance to the park just so that anybody coming in and out would see it and maximize the number of residents and people in the area. The existing retail store, which is already on the site. This is the existing RV park. So there's approximately up to 60 current RV spaces that are there. So with the expansion, they're showing plots for 22 new spaces, as well as a future area of 11. So when you add those up, you get approximately 93 spaces. And if they were to come back again, I passed out a concept plan that I'll show you in a minute as well on the screen. So that's just for the new area in question. And if they want to come in and expand more than what they're showing on that plan, they'll need to come back and do a revised PD concept plan. So this is just for what you're about to see. There's the Thule Princess. There's the existing boat area. And then as we get into the new area for the new PDs, it's pretty much vacant, although there are boat docks out there right now in the park. The access right now is exclusively from Camper Road. There's a paved access that goes in, and then it comes to an end. So one thing we've discussed, and I'll go over that too in a minute, we've had some discussions with our fire marshal's office about a secondary access. In 2016, there was a proposal for something similar. It went through Planning Commission, and then it did not go to City Council. The different applicant at that time withdrew the request. There was a note in there and a blue book which had a development guide, sort of a future plan, and that showed a secondary access. So basically, at some point when they hit the 76th RV unit, they will have to provide a secondary paved access through that property. And they'll either have to loop back Camper Road, or they would have to connect to Sleepy Hollow or possibly another alternative.
When you say secondary, I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say secondary access, does that mean that it has to be available at all times, or are we talking about like an emergency, gated, locked, unless emergency personnel need access type of situation?
That's a good question. My understanding is the road has to connect. The fire marshal is here for further questions. But basically, if this is phase 1 and Camper Road goes like this, they would either have to build it to come back and loop back like this. Option 2 would be they would be able to wrap it around like this and connect to Sleepy Hollow, which is already a street. So that there's basically, you're not just have one street and then no exit point. Thered have to be a second point.
I'm sorry.
No,
Continue
that's okay.
on. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So the proposal in total, let me get to the concept plan now. Okay, so on the plan I provided to you 22 new RV spaces, roughly another 11 I calculated in this area here for future RVs, which are shown here. Boat storage buildings, and I understand from the applicant this will all be indoor storage. If they want to have any outdoor storage, they'll have to have an 8-foot-high screening wall. That's in the current PD ordinance. There'll be a caretaker's residence here for security, so they would build a home over here. The other feature with this is a future cantina or a restaurant that would be very close to the lake on the north end of the property, and that would allow accessory alcohol sales. So you'd have a restaurant, you could get beer and wine or things like that. The current city lease, Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. White, is drafting that. Council's mandated that. So if this gets approved, they will have to complete the lease. All of the uses that you're seeing here are already allowed in phase 1. So really, in the end, this is just an expansion. There obviously wasn't a restaurant before, but retail sales and service, which includes a restaurant, was already allowed. So this is the concept plan that's laid out. If they want to come in and start adding more RV spaces or adding other features, they will have to come back. It will probably be considered a major site plan and come back to you all in the future to look at that. So there'll be another opportunity for the public as well to assess that. We are recommending approval. We believe it's compatible with the comprehensive plan. Open space allows recreational uses, as well as the Lake Nasworthy Master Plan had this as Zone 1, the action sports area. So that allows camping, biking, boating, and trail running, and all of those features are already there. It's consistent with the zoning ordinance. Again, all of the uses were already allowed in the original PD 18-01. This is just an expansion of that. Section 407 of the zoning ordinance, density, screening, et cetera. Based on the acreage that they have, it could up to 229 RV spaces in the future. So they're way under that right now. Even if they included what they've shown here, those plots, they would be probably about a third of that. So they're in compliance. All of the internal parking will have to be paved. So that includes any internal driveways, any new parking spaces. Phase 1 kind of got a pass because it was already legal non-conforming and was already there, those roads. But Phase 2, they would be subject to that unless, you all wanted to look into that. My understanding is they probably have to do a variance from the zoning ordinance to not have to pave. So any internal streets, any parking, and then possible secondary access would all have to be paved to city standards. But otherwise, everything looks the same as Phase 1. The expansion of the existing uses, the additional uses will be consistent. City Council has already authorized the new lease to expand the PD boundary, subject to your all's, if you approve today. There's no anticipated effects on the natural environment. It was mentioned in the lease report to council. The applicant has worked with the Water Utilities Director, Mrs. Strube, and had worked out grinders and tanks to be provided and deal with all of the septic issues. So that has been taken care of, or will be taken care of. Community need, we believe that there is a need for more recreational opportunities at the lake. And I think having the additional boat docks and that restaurant, staff feels will provide an additional amenity for tourists as well as San Angelo residents. And finally, the development patterns, the expansion will continue to utilize Camper Road. The secondary access issue and the paving of the driveways is really, all that really gets done at the time of permitting, or when they come in to get the new RV park expanded. And so we wanted to note it and just make you all aware of it if you're going to approve this today, that they're still going to have to do that, but it would not be, this is just for the zoning part of it. 6 notifications were mailed out. We did not receive any letters back in favor or in opposition as of today. So staff recommends approval of the rezoning from the single-family RS1 zoning district to the planned development PD zoning district, expanding PD 18-03 to allow for uses permitted in the general commercial CG zoning district with a principal use of campground recreational vehicle park on the subject properties, subject to the previous standards in the original PD, and I have a copy of those if you have any questions, and 1 new condition of approval. So the only new condition was that the applicant submit a revised concept plan showing 3 features that are already required by zoning. We believed it was safe to have those on the plan. Delineate the RV park area boundary at least 200 feet from the nearest residential lot. Label the intended use of the buildings to the south as boat trailer storage buildings, and remove all references to Sandy Beach, which is not part of this request. So I'll quickly go back to the park. So this area to the north doesn't actually exist. It's actually on the water. The sort of discussions with Parks and Rec is that they would actually fill this in and provide a beach amenity in these 2 areas, but because they don't exist today, we just wanted that removed from the plan to avoid any confusion. The revised plan that I gave you there does show a 200-foot buffer, so it's not from the PD boundary, but from the park boundary. And so Sleepy Hollow is down here. They are showing 200 feet. I would like to keep that in the condition of approval, and we work that out with GIS later and actually see a digital copy of that plan that I got Friday, just to make sure there's no issues. And if that's correct, then that condition will be satisfied anyway. So that's the end of the presentation. If you have any questions or comments.
I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
The lots that are, these new lots, you said there's 22, the yellow lots.
Correct.
Are all of those lots proposed to have water, sewer, electric connections?
That's my understanding from talking with permits, that before any of these mobile home parks are usually lot by lot or plot by plot. In this case, it's for the entire area of RVs, so they would have to come in and talk to permits about getting those hookups.
Okay. This land doesn't currently have hookups?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I don't believe so.
I don't believe
No.
it does. Okay, and then the second question, you've got this area that shows future RV spaces, but you're also requiring a road of sorts for access, secondary access. Is that delineated on this site plan?
It is not, and again, I think it's because this is just a concept plan only
Right.
at this point, and so when they come in for permits, they'll have to address that, and I think at that time, we would probably want to see a plan so that it's clear where that road's going to be, and that's kind of what the 2016 report talked about that was presented, having a separate development guide that was going to show the internal streets, but again, that did not go forward.
The concern I have with what's proposed is that if that road is required as a condition for the approval, it's going to probably significantly change the layout of this proposal. You've got a large area here that you've said is not part of this, and if they add improvements over there, it would be subject to review and approval. I don't want to go through a process where it's materially changed with the city staff and it's not brought before us for discussion, unless, I mean, maybe the other folks up here feel differently, but I think it's important that the folks out in this Nasworthy area have a clear understanding of what's proposed and what's approved for this project, because this has been a high visibility, high sensitivity tract of land for years for that area. So
minor site plan revisions could be approved if it's minor by the director. Major
Yeah,
site plans would have to come before this board.
I look at this site plan and I see future RV spaces. It seems like we're going to have a road that cuts through there somehow.
Yeah,
And so if you move that and you flag off, a big chunk of the land that's in white right now, that's not on this plan, and you put future RV spaces over there, that could materially change what's proposed. If you think a road can get through there, fine. Yeah.
And we do have an RV park ordinance that provides standards for how big spaces have to be, the road widths and all of that.
Right.
And if they were wanting to expand into this area at all,
Yes.
as Hillary said, that would have to come back to you all.
Okay.
That would not be
And that's-
considered a
yeah.
minor.
Okay. Perfect.
Jeff, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
In this PD, what we are looking at today, so we have the new RV spaces that are platted out for us basically on the site plan, and then just a long strip that says future RV spots. Would they need to come back when they get ready to develop those also?
Yes, they would need
Okay,
a revised
not
concept
just on the
plan.
other side, but any of those. Okay, thank you.
Unless it's a very minor tweak, let's say they're adding like 2 spaces or just a small orientation change, that could be approved by John, our planning director. But something major like that, I would think would see you'd have a second crack at this to look at any expansion, any major expansion like that.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for Jeff? Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
I'm going to open this up for public comment. I guess my main first question is about the access and the roads that may be required for life safety purposes. If there's anyone from the staff or the city that could weigh in on that.
Ross Coleman, I'm with the fire department.
Morning.
At this point, in this plan for where we are, that road can be unimproved, and it can be, your question was about whether it could just be chained just for access. Yes, it could.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Poe. I'm a resident. My family at 2686 Sleepy Hollow. Is there any way we can go back to one of the previous pictures here? That's fine right there. Well, one more. So my house sits the second from the corner here on Sleepy Hollow. This is a dead-end street as of right now. It does have a pipe ballard that can be unlocked or cut in emergencies and swung open. There's a gravel road that for years has, the maintenance building is right here. Oops, sorry. Then it loops through the park, and then all these roads in this area are accessible during the boat races. This is the path that the boats take to get back to. So in emergency situations, yes. There's a lot of concerns our residents have. I received one of the letters from the city. Number one, I'm purely disgusted in the timeline that the letter was sent out a week before this hearing. Number one. Number two, there's a direct chain reaction between the 35-year lease that was approved by the city and this zoning today. I want that to be very clear. That zoning for the 35 years is, let me back up. We applaud Antler Hills and Ray at Golden Antler Corporation for what he's doing at the RV park. He runs a very nice operation for what he has out there. He keeps it very clean. There's relatively no problems at the park. And Ray does a very good job, him and his family there. You know, we visit the park quite often, the general store, the fuel, and so forth there at the park. But the problem with this is, just for the record, how many spots do you have, Ray, at the park currently today? How many spots are there?
Want to come up, sir?
I think the 60 is not correct.
And I think that, just to clarify, that was an estimate based on the number of plots on the aerial photo. And it's very hard because when the aerial photo was taken last year, RVs come and go. So that was roughly, I may have overestimated for y'all.
With sewer and electrical and cabins on site, I would just to get that on record, how many spots are currently there?
So with the cabins and everything, all the spots together, there's roughly 100 spaces.
So you said there was 60 spots. Actually, there's 100 spots. The planned expansion, you said, is up to 229. So as of yesterday, Ray met with the landowners here, and we appreciate that, but there's 25 additional spots. That'd bring it to 125. The current issue with the city with the sewer capacity on that side of the lake, they assured us with their pump stations and their different types of holding facilities that they can accommodate the additional 25 spots, the restaurant, and a caretaker's quarters, and then that would be maxed out at the current sewer capacity at that side of the lake for that addition, is what their studies are showing. What our concern is this finger, in the lease, there's a caretaker's residence that you just explained is supposed to be where this arrow's at, and that lease says it can be a modular home, mobile home. And I believe Ray, we met with him yesterday on that, but it kind of bothered me because he slipped that in there as a built home. It's not going to be a built home. It's going to be a modular home, mobile home. No other homes touching the water in Lake Nasworthy are modular homes. Now, there are modular cabin homes within the RV park, but that's understood because it's zoned for that and it's correctly built within their commercial facility there. But the impact to our homes in our neighborhood to have a modular home, a lakefront property, would drastically impact the value of our homes. Also, too, is a part of this zoning, they are going to be held to the commercial standards of building the restaurant and the street. That is our major concern of us, if they're going to be held to the same commercial standards that other businesses in town, as far as the pavement, the quality of the building, and all the city code as far as building that location. We're not petitioning the zoning of the sale of alcohol and the commercial use. We're just asking for a little bit more buffer in between the residential area and what's allowed. We understand the boathouse storage that comes with being on the lake. There's a need for more boathouse storage that comes with that if it's done properly and built per code. We understand that. But 229 spots total. If he already has 100 and he's adding 25 more, it's going to be a tight area to get the additional RV spots in that area that's allotted with his lease. That's all I have is the concern about in his lease goes hand in hand with this zoning is the modular home and the access if Sleepy Hollow is ever going to be opened back up, or they're just going to remain this loop all the way back to the park would be the emergency zone, or if Sleepy Hollow will be opened back up for the high flow of traffic.
I'm assuming you don't want Sleepy Hollow
No.
opened.
We get, in the summertime, springtime, countless people, hundreds of cars come through here and realize it's a dead end, turn around, and realize they can't get into the park. And it's a constant battle. Or they'll park down here, then
walk through.
The the city police will come down there and very diligent, but they're tired of dealing with it too, of running cars out of our neighborhood and getting them turned back around to get into the park access.
Sure.
On the flip side, as this goes forward, things that we agree with Ray's, like the restaurant here on the point, this is not really part of the planning, but let's let you know this zoning it's a chain reaction. The park on Friday and Saturday has a $3 admittance fee to get into the park. He's spending $1 million plus building a restaurant for our community that's generating tax revenue, people to the lake. That needs to also be addressed down the road about if they're going to use these different types of commercial properties here, there needs to be waived the park fee just so he can generate enough revenue because people are not going to come use these facilities. They're having to pay twice to come use these places. So we see as residents a need for it. We also want to work closely to where it doesn't encroach in our areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I live at 2682 Sleepy Hollow. I'm kind of like Dave. I don't know where this thing's going, but I don't like it. They're gonna open Sleepy Hollow pretty soon. If we get 300 campsites back there and 200 boat slips. And right now that road's so busy, my dog already got run over. And it's like they say, the police don't want to do nothing. You know, they're already snowed under. And then we don't really want a mobile home in front of my boat dock. And we got some $1.9 million houses out there right across from this. And like we're saying, this was all on short notice. Heck, I was in North Dakota and my wife says, "Hey, you need to get home." I go, "Why?" And I get home and there's no zone change in front of my house. It's 2 miles down the road. But I'm here. And there was 4 letters sent out. And we are 4 people here. We didn't send it back, but we don't want it. And like, I'm not opposed to the restaurant, 25, 30 more RV parks, but come on, 300? Come on. And there are some sewer issues out there. We don't know about them, but they are. And we talked to this guy, Ray, and he's willing to move off this finger. Well, he said he was yesterday, but I don't hear him saying it today. So, and I'm like, y'all, we need to see a bigger picture of what's going on.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to say one thing to you all, just to clarify, and I definitely understand the resident concerns too. We do when we looked at this. The 229 is what the zoning would allow, but with the PD, you're locked in by the concept plan. So even if this current area over here is 100 and the new is about 40, it's still only at 140. And again, I'm not saying that, you know, whether that's appropriate or not is up to you all, but I'm saying the 229 is what the zoning would allow, and they're well under that. If they want to come back and expand more in the future and keep adding things on, they will have to come back here.
Okay,
We'll
so
look
let's
at it
clarify
again.
that. We've got a blue area that is existing, and we have a red area that is the proposed expansion.
Correct.
So let's go to the blue area. Let's say this all gets approved and we go down the road a couple of years. Can they add lots in that blue area without your approval?
It's part of the PD.
Because the original PD, they didn't have a concept plan, but I think because all of it is part of the PD, I do believe they would have to come back here, because when we
agree?
approved Phase 1, they didn't have an official concept plan, but there was an Exhibit A, and Exhibit A was the aerial. And so to me, that still acted as a de facto concept plan. That's my
So
opinion.
are we looking at an entirely new PD for this one tract of land, or are we looking at a separate PD that works in conjunction with the first one?
It's for all, what you're doing is
It's
you're
the
allowing
entire
all of it.
thing.
Yeah, the new
Thank
concept
you.
plan was just for this side,
Right,
but
right.
what you're approving today is basically for all of it, what's
Okay.
existing and what's new.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jeff, I have a,
Like, this current sewer system of San Angelo
Yes,
can only handle the 100 spots that are already here,
right.
a restaurant, a caretaker's residence, and 25 more, or 24, 25 more spots. No housing built in this area.
Right.
No additional improvements, unless there is a $15-20 million master plan, trust
Right.
fund legal battle that goes on with the city down the road.
Right.
Nothing else can be built in this area or anywhere else on this side of the lake.
No more houses.
Nothing.
This would be the last of the
No
the
airport,
improvements.
industrial expansion.
Right.
No additional homes down the highway down from Lake Nasworthy. So it's not just lake residents. He's tapped out with his current system. We're not battling the expansion. We're just wanting a nice buffer zone, and we're worried that
I understand.
it's just going to be a chain reaction of just keep going.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
No, thank you.
I'm Judy May. I live at 2678 Sleepy Hollow, right next to Gary. I'm the fourth house from the end. I am one of the 4 that got a letter here. I've listened to a lot of comments here today. I've listened to, what is being proposed and everything. I think one of my biggest complaints or concerns is this little finger here that we're talking about. Because we're residents, because we do have approximately, and there's not just 4 houses that are in question here. There's approximately 10 residents here that's actually going to be looking at this all the time. You're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 to $10 million worth of value here in property. And we're talking about 1.5 acres here that we are asking that you consider some sort of a buffer zone on that 1.5 acre, that finger, so that we don't have to be looking at commercial development. Second of all, because this is lake frontage, there should not be a mobile home sitting on lake frontage. We're not allowed to have it, so why is he? We are not opposed to a stick home, if that's, an option. But I don't think that he should have a difference just because he wants to have this commercial development. He shouldn't have to say, okay, he can have a mobile home sitting on lake frontage when we can't do that. And we have to look at that. And no matter how you look at it, if he comes in on wheels, that's a mobile home and it's temporary. It's not going to increase in value. Our property, we want to increase in value. And if I'm trying to sell my property down the road and somebody's looking out my back door looking at a mobile home, they're not going to want to do it. If you don't make this a buffer zone here, then this area here could be developed into commercial development. It could be more storage buildings. It could be RV park. And we're looking at that, and you're decreasing our home values when you do that.
Jeff, could you go back to the aerial that shows the proposed improvements site plan? I believe this area you're talking about is where the boat storage buildings would be located. Is that
Actually,
correct?
no, it's this part right here.
Was that lake? It looks like there's boats.
Yeah, it's a finger. See that
Oh, it's
finger
back.
right there where
Okay.
it says caretaker?
Yes.
Okay. And
That's across the way from where you are.
he said earlier in his presentation that that's where he would be building his home, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's not the case. He's not building a home there. He is pulling
Proposing to
in
put
a mobile home.
Right. Okay.
There's a huge difference. You're talking about, and I'm not opposed to mobile homes. There's some really nice ones out there. I mean, my daughter and son-in-law live in a mobile home. That's very, very nice. But we're still talking about lake frontage and following city rules and regulations.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's not. Plus the fact that you're backing up to $1 million to $3 million homes. It's not right for us, and we shouldn't have to look at it. So all we're asking for is a buffer zone there. You know, it's 1.5 acres approximately is what that little finger is. You see wildlife there all the time. Yeah, the deer are there all the time. The turkeys are there all the time. It's also an area where the reeds and everything still continue to grow. I mean, it's a great wildlife refuge. So that should be considered also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just so that we're clear, the underlying zoning of this PD is general commercial. We did allow for caretaker's quarters in the original PD, but the current ordinance restricts mobile and manufactured homes from being in commercial zones. So that would not.
I was thinking that we could maybe put like RS1 restrictions on the residents. Can we not do that?
Well, and you could specify what type of dwelling unit it was with this plan development. But again, today, if he came in with the underlying CG zoning, the
couldn't put a mobile home there.
or manufactured home
Yeah.
would not be allowed.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Ross Copeland. I'm in 2690 Sleepy Hollow. I don't know where the map is that has all the houses listed, but I'm the fourth person to receive the letter. So if he was zoned where he couldn't, or there was an ordinance where he couldn't have that modular home or that mobile home.
Well, and let's clarify, modular home is different. A modular home is a stick-built home that is pre-assembled somewhere else, brought in and put on a foundation. So it's basically a stick-built home just built off-site.
Those are allowed under
Those would be
RS1.
allowed. So a modular home is a little bit different. Again, those have to meet to the building code standards. They meet the same restrictions as any stick-built home would here in the city. What I was referring to is a manufactured, or what we consider a mobile home, is what people would think about. So the mobile and manufactured would not be allowed. A modular would.
Well, that's our major, my major concern. And I don't know how it was ordinance, but he said within his lease that he is, within that 35-year lease that he has with the city, that he is granted that ability to bring in that home on wheels, whether it be whatever, however you want to bring it in.
And let me just clarify that. There's a difference between the lease. As the lessor, the city owns the property and is acting almost like a private individual leasing property.
Right.
Even if the lease allows something, if the zoning doesn't allow it, it's not allowed.
Right.
And so he's going to have to meet the lease requirements and the zoning requirements in order to allow that. Does that make sense?
It does. I kind of want to echo their sentiment. We're not opposed to growing out there. We understand it's a good thing for the city to see economic growth out there from the additional RV spots, the restaurant. I think it'll be well received. We're concerned from a property value standpoint. When you brought up the thought of that road opening up to Sleepy Hollow and that being a second access point, he said that was not an option yesterday in our private conversations. That terrifies me because that little line that somebody drew basically went through my living room, you know, when it opened up to Sleepy Hollow. So that's a problem. That road can't withstand the amount of traffic that 200 spots worth of RVs would bring through there. So as of now, I stand in opposition. That's great.
Thank you.
I think another point to be made about the secondary access road, and Ross can probably verify this, it would probably be emergency access only on Sleepy Hollow because they do charge a fee to enter this park. So probably if there's a secondary access needed for the park, it might be that loop going back to Camper Road with an additional emergency services access along Sleepy Hollow. But Ross may be able to further clarify that. But again,
from what Ross was saying earlier, it sounds like the secondary access is for emergency only. Is that correct? So it doesn't sound like the road would need to be opened up for any reason, regardless of what was done over there, except for emergency access as it is, I'm assuming, right now, right? There's a gate or something at the end of that road? Okay. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on public comment? Yes, sir.
Broadway, I'm the current city tenant out there.
I appreciate the homeowners coming. I did meet with them yesterday and talk to them about their concerns with the first finger and the caretaker's residence. That's come up pretty recently with me, like I talked to him about moving that. I understand their concerns, and that doesn't have to happen.
Okay.
We just put that on there, because we want to stay on the property. We would just like to move from where we're at now and go out there.
Yes, sir.
This map doesn't show it, but there is a current road that does go out.
Yes, sir.
That is there. That would be utilized for the loop. And for the record, I do not want to see Sleepy Hollow opened up to this.
Okay.
Even for emergency access. The road's already there. It's already existing for that.
Right.
And so I don't personally want to see that opened up either. This area here is a concern for both myself and the residents. If that's can be designated no structure building, I'm okay with that, with no structures being built in that area.
Okay.
It's within my lease boundary now, and I liked it in the lease boundary because future somebody couldn't come in there and build something between us.
Right.
So then we're both having to deal with that.
So do you need are you requesting an area designated for a residence somewhere on this property?
Well, it's like they were saying that within the city codes, the lease says one caretaker's residence per. Like I couldn't have two, so the current one would have to go away if I built a new one.
Right.
But and we wanted it down here because it was more open and we could actually gate it in.
Right.
Right now it's
a nicer piece of land.
It's open to the public right now, my house, where it
Yes.
sits. The park's kind of grown around it over the years. And so that's why we talked about moving out there,
Okay.
And, but no, I wanted them to speak first, and yes, I'm echoing what I said yesterday with them is I do get their concerns there.
Okay.
With that space.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it. Okay, can you go to the conditions for approval, please? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on public comment? All right, I'm going to close public comment.
I was going to say, if Mr. Broadway's okay with that, and you all, we would probably add I'll read this quickly, we would add a subsection D here that removes the reference to the residence as well, because that still shows on the plan.
Yes.
So there's only one condition. It's the applicant shall submit a revised concept plan to the planning director for approval that delineates the RV park area boundary at least 200 feet from the nearest residential lot. The plan that I got from the future marina owner does show that. I want to clarify that with GIS to make sure that actually is 200 feet, but it looks like it. Label the intended uses of the buildings to the south as the boat trailer storage buildings. There's 4, I can go back in a minute, but on that plan you'll see those 4 boxes on the bottom just to make sure what those actually were, and he said they would be for boat storage. And 3, remove all references to Sandy Beach, which is not part of the request. So D would be also remove the residence from the concept plan as well. And that's our only condition.
And just so we're clear as well, this is an expansion of an existing plan development, so there are conditions that went with the previous plan development that they have also met. So this condition that Jeff is adding here that clarifies the site plan would be in addition to what they already have on the books.
Okay. Could you go back to the site plan again, please? So, based on the comments from Ross about emergency access, it sounds like that road already exists within this development.
Yes, and I think the only thing I wasn't clear on from this morning was whether or not that existing road had to be paved or not. to provide the 2016 plan essentially showed Camper Road going like this and doing a loop, and then going back again. And then the area to Sleepy Hollow was only going to be an emergency access with a gate. It was never intended to go through Sleepy Hollow.
Right.
So this road after this point is unpaved from about here down and around to here. The only question I had is whether or not that still had to be paved as part of it, or whether that could remain existing as unpaved.
You have requirements within the commercial ordinance that require that
and
it
even the
be
camper
paved.
RV section of the ordinance requires that the internal streets be paved.
Right.
So they would have to pave any.
So maybe
new-
there's a small area on the back side of this that's unpaved that connects it to Sleepy Hollow or whatever the road is that's around the corner, but all of the roads that are being utilized for access to these improvements would be paved.
That's correct. So I'm pretty confident that even though Camper Road stops here, and then the rest of it is an unpaved road, like a caliche road, that from here to here, they'll have to loop around and provide a paved access.
Yes.
And as well as any of the internal streets that they build in between the RVs.
Right.
And then the one parking spot for each RV also has to be paved.
Okay.
Okay.
And it sounds like Ray has agreed to remove the caretaker's residence request on this plan if that's something that we're willing to consider.
So the Sandy Beach would be removed. He would submit a revised plan that shows that these buildings are for boat storage, and then the residence would be gone. Everything else would stay the same.
Okay? Mr. Poe's comments about the limitations of our water and sewer system are concerning to me as a citizen, but I don't feel like it's our job to review a case and consider expansion of this area on the basis of the limitations of our infrastructure.
I think along those lines, though, can we get some clarification on how many spots are actually being added? Because I think
looks like 23.
Right.
22.
And
22.
Yeah.
So which would bring the current number of lots is 100. Is that right? I mean, is that what
we're at 100 already,
and we're adding 22 with possibly 11 more for future
Correct. So
expansion.
133.
That's the comments in the report.
but those 11 more are going to have to come to us for approval before they get put in.
That's right.
So all we're approving is 22 more.
So are you considering cabins and RVs the same? Because I think on the first part, there's some cabins and then RV spaces. So would they?
And that's what equals 100.
You're talking about
Correct.
the total, or are you talking about RV spaces only?
Well, they've shown on the concept plan RV spaces, so it's very specific.
Okay.
So it would have to be an
the cabins
RV.
which were thrown in there with the RV spaces are separate.
I think that 100 that Ray gave us includes those lots that have cabins on them.
Includes the cabins,
that's
so
every
that's not.
single, that's every single space.
That's
Okay.
every slot.
So that's not just RVs, which the number that Jeff had is for RV only.
The expansion.
Expansion, well, the cabin,
Oh,
a
total.
cabin, how they're defined and how they're set up, they're considered an RV. They're set up, they're hooked up, everything the same as an RV.
Okay.
They're actually considered an RV.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so every spot out there is considered an RV spot,
They're under 300 feet,
399 square feet.
399 square feet. That's the
So
limitation.
they're considered an RV. They're set up like one, they're hooked up the same as an RV, the same cord, the same everything. Nothing's hard plumbed in or nothing.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it. Okay. Anyone else have questions for the staff, or does anyone wish to make a motion? Lance? Yes, sir.
So street engineering, I was actually in water utilities when the initial conversations were had about the sewer system on this. And just so you guys know, the discussion on that, because this newer expansion is going to have some kind of a septic system and a grinder pump to pump it into the system to reach that. That can be staggered to where that system pumps an off-demand or off-peak time. And that was how all of this was going to be able to be achieved, is because it would be pumping that system when it was not a peak demand in the rest of the system. And all of that has been looked at by water utilities to be able to accommodate that. So that's how that's being achieved on the sewer side of things.
Thank you.
Another point that we've been working with Park and Recreations about, and how this is a recreation area, is some of the, we would like to, at some point here, bring up and seek a variance to the ordinance of some of the internal road paving. The current RV park don't, you know, and with that, it's, if you go out there like this week, it's so hot.
Right.
You start putting blacktop around these RVs, you can't cool them now. But you can't, like the people that go out there, we want to keep it like a country family setting, more or less. You know, just go out there and get out of the pavement and get out of the city and all that. But just to like walk up and down them roads, we got people that walk across to our boat docks and their shoes get sucked off their feet because it's so hot.
You have the luxury of trees in the
Yes.
in the original development that I don't think you have much of in this expansion. So
Yeah, it's there's some trees in this expansion, and but you know where the RVs are going to be, you know, that's in the treed section. But the access roads to them and some of the sites, you know, it's you know, we really want to get away from that paving if we can, and just and build the roads like we have now.
So let's clarify in the existing RV park, you have paved main roads through the development. Is that correct?
No.
No.
There's no paved roads.
So the
in
road that
current RV
runs,
park.
what's the road that runs along the lake there?
Camper Road.
Camper Road.
So Camper Road is paved to.
It's all the way to the restaurant? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
It's paved, but it's.
And that's the only paved road that is out
Yeah.
there?
And it's a super narrow road.
Right.
I mean, it's really narrow. It's hard to even get two vehicles to go by it. So the current road that's there is not even probably the city spec.
Right.
It's just there's no plan to expand that any wider that goes by the park. I'm okay with that road being paved, you know, and stuff, but we develop into the RV sites themselves. You know, I don't know. I've been to parks where the site itself is paved. You park an RV on top of a asphalt site, and you get these big holes in it. It just sinks into the site in 106-degree temperature. You know, now we can maintain the roads better the way we got it now. There's no safety concern because the traffic within the park is 5 miles an hour.
So what are you proposing
The
to do instead
internal
of?
roads to the RV sites, and the current ordinance says that, and I understand why those ordinances in the past get put into place, but you know, we're not building a man camp. We're not trying to be something temporary. You know, we want to build a recreation facility that's like you're out in the country still, and not where you go from asphalt pavement to asphalt pavement again. Actually, this week was a prime example of that. I mean, it is, no one's out walking their dogs on the street. You can't. You burn their feet, you know, and you walk across to the boat docks and your shoes get sucked off in the asphalt. It gets that hot.
So what materials comprise the road system internal of your existing development?
It's mostly road-based number 2 is what they call it. And it's all packed in. And that's what all the sites are done with. All the sites are done in as well.
Okay, that was my next question.
You know, and it's easy. Like this area right here, really, we'll probably never see any development. This park here, when you get heavy rains, all the water flows that way, right? And most of this flows this way, and it collects right there instead of running into the lake. If the roads in here were pavement, and it'd be washed out all the time. You know, when those roads do get damaged, we can go in there easily and quickly and repair them. Pavement wouldn't be the case. You know, it's very difficult to maintain that that pavement versus we can go in there with our maintainer and build a new road and pack it back in and it's good. I mean, like I say, the water flows pretty heavy out there when it rains when it rains a lot. That's why this area here is just basically a bowl that just collects all the water. And it's allowed to seep back into the road. You know, and this road here that they put in years ago, it's pretty heavily built. I mean, and it is only for emergency access only. And when the boat races are here, they use that for their loop. But other than that, it's never open. You know, we plan to gate that off and put a gate there that they can access, so to keep the public from trying to go down that road. But I guess that's something I've been working with Park and Recs about with Carl and that department, is to see if we couldn't look at a variance to that ordinance on the internal roads. I don't mind building them to the size and all that, let's just not pave them. You know, and the water table out there is pretty low, and so that when the water rises and falls, so does some of that ground out there, and that would just bust it up out there, we think, in the sites anyway.
So there is no variance process for that. This PD would be the way to look at the road pavement. Section 407, which deals with RV and campground sites, was approved in 2014, and they specifically looked at new development for RV and campgrounds. That's the section that talks about the paved internal roads. Camper Road has existed out there for numerous years, and it's paved. So there is a road that is paved. It can be done.
It's not the internal roads, though.
It'll be the circulation. It's an internal park road today. It's not a per se city street. It's an internal park road.
Yes.
Correct.
But all of the roads that lead to the sites in the existing development,
yes, sir,
are not paved.
That's correct. And when we did the original
And this
PD,
approval
we were told.
would require Ray to pave all of that.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So when we did the original PD, that was the direction we were told to head towards Section 407, which was the standards that City Council had approved in 2014.
Okay.
But as she mentioned, through this PD, that is the way you all would vary that. There's no separate variance process. So if
We need to address it now,
yes,
is what you're saying.
That's right. He
Okay.
can't address it later with a variance or through Carl. This is the process through which you and ultimately the city council need to decide if this gets paved or not.
Okay.
And I
You go
think-
back to the site plan again? Sure. Right, the internal roads. Okay, wait, whoop, yep.
And I think to add to that, so you've got the two issues. One is the access for fire circulation, which
Yes.
would be like a loop. And then there's, like Hillary was just mentioning, in addition to that, it's everything else. It's all the internal drives and the parking spaces and all of that too. And so all of that would be required to be paved as of right now.
Right. Is there parking for that restaurant?
There will be, yeah. This is just the footprint where it's going to sit.
Okay.
And
Where are you going to park cars?
At the restaurant.
Okay.
And, you know, that right now, like I say, that the paving comes up to here and it loops back a little bit.
Okay.
We're asking for the variance for all these two roads. And
The
I have
internal
to-
roads,
and I have to pave the
not
sites.
Camper Road.
Yeah, not Camp Road. It's already paved in.
In the area around the restaurant, you'd probably want to pave as well, right? Okay. You guys understand what we're discussing, what he's describing?
Those are within the RV, which is by RV standards are supposed to be paved. But what about the loop road? Didn't you mention that you didn't want it paved?
Well, this morning was the first time that I learned that we're going to have the secondary egress out.
But that road already exists, doesn't it?
The road exists, and the city and the council approves it to be used for events all the time.
Right.
You know, well, all the time. I would say the boat races, you know,
It's not paved right
No,
now.
it's the city
That road
road.
is not
It's
paved.
It's not paved.
It's the same
That
as
road's
your
not paved.
internal roads.
Yeah, it's the same as my internal roads.
Is that road going to have to be utilized to access those boat slips?
No.
For the boat
Well,
storage?
None of our guests will ever have to use that road for any reason whatsoever.
Okay.
The road that, you know, that gets out of the park here, they'll never go down that road unless directed to by some type of an emergency.
So how do you get a boat out of those storage buildings?
They would come down here, either use this ramp to launch, park their trailers here, or they would go out to the other city boat ramp
Okay.
on this road here. They all come in here. They would all come in here to store and go out. This road here is not used for nothing except for emergency access, just
Right.
as it is now.
So it would seem to make sense to at least pave from the boat storage up to the restaurant area so that you have a loop of primary egress that's paved. And the internal roads, maybe between the RVs and to get to those slips and everything, would maybe stay in a similar condition to what's maintained on the existing sites. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. From here, once you get out past here, that's all our Park and Rex Road there.
Right, and that's kind of the emergency road area that I don't think you would necessarily need to pave, but if you've got trailers with boats and, you know, a lot of weight and traffic on that road, even if it's an internal road, it would seem to make sense to pave it so that you didn't have issues with it.
Which road this one here?
So, yes, sir.
I would connect.
Take from where those boat storage places are and go all the way up and connect it back to Camper Road. Yeah. Does that make sense? All right. Anyone else have questions for Ray? Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it. Any further discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
Are the homeowners content knowing that there will be no mobile home built on the finger of the lake? Are y'all happy with that answer?
Yes, please come forward.
I believe the consensus is, and by the nod of heads, but this finger is nothing's built. It's a buffer zone, a wildlife buffer zone. There's a row of trees right here across the water from us. He talked about how the water all flows down to this. It pulls up where this caretaker's residence would be. There's another line of trees and reeds all through here. So the boat storage would back up to those reeds. So you may see the tops of the buildings.
But not much.
But not much.
So you've got a pretty good buffer if the caretaker's residence is not on that.
If this was a dead area,
yes,
this would be a good buffer in between our residential neighborhood. And like I said, we'll be the first ones to eat at his restaurants if he'll have us after this. But I mean, we just would like a buffer, a reasonable stuff, and it's built to the commercial standards of the other commercial businesses in town.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Let me clarify real quick that based on the number of units without a future expansion, this secondary access would not have to be paved. It would just have to meet fire code standards for an access.
Right.
It would be only.
Well, it's a secondary access really when it gets past that boat storage.
Right.
It's kind of a primary access to get to those boat storage buildings.
Correct. And so it's really up to you internal to this area where the RV park is going to be.
Right.
The current standards would say all of those roads have to be paved.
Right.
If you back off of that through this PD, then any fire code requirement would not trigger paving.
Okay.
On the secondary access.
Okay. Anyone have other comments or want to make a motion?
So the homeowners are happy knowing that there's not going to be knowing that there's not going to be a caretaker's home built. And that there is an existing buffer zone there now. And because we could, or I don't know that we could do this or not, but we could ask that trees be planted.
There's a tree line from the Copeland's residence here. There's in my house, there's a tree line all the way around the water and heavy reeds. So right here, there's a tree line, probably a 50 to 75-foot gap, open grass area. Then another tree line with reeds between this lake and where his boat storage. So we would ask that in this area right here would remain a wildlife /
natural area,
no use area
Yep.
for future expansion. Other than the road that's currently already there used for emergency access or secondary access in case of emergencies.
Okay.
Can that be done on this level?
Designate a natural area?
Yeah, they can remain, that section remain a natural area. All these corrections that you see fit could be made part of this plan development and further proceed to city council.
Anyone want to make a motion?
So part of this motion is also if the roads are going to be paved.
That's right.
I'm not touching that. Are you okay with striking the residents out of that area? With striking the residents out of that area? I mean, you could build a home there as long as it meets, it's not a mobile home, but are you okay with not building a home there? Do you want to strike that out? They want to leave it as an...
I'm okay not building a home here.
Okay.
If we did everything down here, we'd come back and ask probably it be put.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing over there at all. But we're okay with staying out of there and getting along with our neighbors. I went to their houses, I seen their concerns, so.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I'd like to make the motion that a revised concept plan is put in place. The residence is removed. A designated natural area is in place. No paved roads are required. And the sandy beach be removed.
No paved roads? Just internal or at all?
He has a paved road, and
you go back to the site plan.
And I would think that if he's going to build a cantina building on somebody else's property, that's a huge expense, and to pave the road is going to be that much more expense. And I don't know that it's required. I mean, why do you need a paved road?
No, we have the authority to say it's not required.
Yeah, I don't think it should be required.
Commissioner Brooks, can you clarify the buffer zone and how that would be encompassed on a site plan?
The buffer zone would be where the proposed caretaker's residence is.
That finger of land.
So just nothing in this area at all?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Are we good?
We have a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second.
Can I ask one last question before we vote?
Yes.
Okay, on the cantina, does he have to go, he has to follow what guidelines, does he not? Okay. And that includes the parking, correct? Okay, cool. All right. I just want to clarify that. Good. Ready to vote whenever everyone else is.
We have a motion and a second to approve, subject to the adjustments and conditions that Commissioner Brooks has put in place. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed. And the reason I'm opposed is I sat on that committee for a year, on the RV committee, doing all that, and I still think it's a good idea to have roads, paved internal roads on that. So that's my opposition.
All right. So 5-1. Thank you. Right-of-way abandonment. City Council has final authority for approval of right-of-way abandonments. A request to approve the abandonment of approximately 105,000 square feet of East Avenue D, public right-of-way, generally located on East Avenue D, extending between South Oaks and Rust Street in the Fort Concho addition.
Shelley Pascal, City Planner. This is the proposed right-of-way. It does run straight through Fort Concho. They are looking to go from South Oak Street near Rust Street. They're not going completely to Rust Street, but it's right here at the alley before Rust. It is within Harry Thomas's district, and it is in Fort Concho neighborhood. The future land use of this property is campus and institutional, and the zoning of this area of Fort Concho is RS2 and RM1. These are two pictures. The first one is looking east, down East Avenue D, across South Oaks. The other one is looking west. I did mail out 9 notifications. I did not receive any in favor nor opposition. We believe there would be no negative impacts of this. It would actually provide more safety and security to the visitors to the historic Fort Concho. And the utilities, Frontier and Sudden Lake, stated that there is not any of their lines within this proposed right-of-way proposed to be abandoned. However, the City of San Angelo utilities will require an unobstructed easement. City staff, we do recommend approval, subject to 3 different conditions. And the payment of the assessment formula, to submit a subdivision replat, absorbing the subject property into the adjacent lots, and providing an unobstructed easement that satisfy the City of San Angelo utilities.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, Shelley. Open it up for public comment. You would please state your name.
David Montes, 627 East Avenue D. I would just like to know why you guys are closing the roads, because we only have 2 other accesses to that neighborhood. Just because you guys wanted to close it for the fort? I mean, the people who live in there, the residents, they're not wanting this closure.
Okay.
And I didn't get one of the letters, so I guess I don't live close enough to Avenue D to get one.
Right. What was the notification area? 200 feet? There you go. Okay. Could someone on the city staff speak to the reasoning behind?
I think technically the applicant is going to be the other city staff, so I think at the appropriate time they could maybe come up next and describe their rationale.
Thank you, sir.
Carl White, Parks and Recreation Director. I help to oversee the fort. Bob Bluehart. The primary reason for this request is to reestablish the integral border of historic Fort Concho. Fort Concho is the reason why we're here, why our city is here. It's our most important historical asset. And since the 1920s, there's been a slow process of reestablishing Fort Concho, its buildings, its boundaries, and that has occurred over the last several decades. And this is one of those steps in that process to finally reestablish the entire boundary of the fort.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? All right, I'm going to close public comment. Yes, sir.
I didn't know we were all here for the fort. I thought we were here to live and enjoy the city, but I guess we are here for the fort. I don't see why the road has to be closed. I mean, other than that they want it closed, I really don't understand why.
Right. I understand. Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Discussion among us on the board here, or a motion, please.
Carl, what does, when you close it, explain to me the, sorry, it's me.
Oh, can't hear well.
Just explain to me the traffic pattern. So if you're going to close it,
Yes.
literally close it, right? So, because right now, right, if you go to any function at that fort, sometimes they hold functions in those individual buildings, right? And you would park on that street. So
Definitely
closing it.
If
what
Avenue
happens?
D was the only way into the neighborhood, I definitely understand the concern. Highland is a primary route. When we did a closure of the road for different reasons over the last several months, traffic did shift to Highland and down Rust.
Okay.
There's still access to the neighborhood.
No, I'm not arguing access to the neighborhood. I'm just wanting to know what is going to happen with that street.
What physically is going to happen?
Yeah.
Oh,
I get the access. I'm not even
Okay.
concerned with that. I'm asking what's happening to the street. What's the plan? Closing it for a reason. I'm just wondering what's going on with it.
you may want to talk to this, but we'll physically close it, remove the asphalt, and in time, basically reconstruct the company road as it exists here on this side as well.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Morning, Commissioners. Bob Luhart, Site Manager, and I think Carl stole my lines. If you look at the north side of the fort, and that street was closed, I think, 15 years ago, what we did there, which meets the fire code, I believe, at the time, and would probably meet the fire code today, is what we would do on the south side. Mr. Spano was talking about access. We have several buildings there at the site. We've already worked out a plan where the buildings that do have a public accommodation, there is parking in the rear, and that would still be accessible by Washington Drive.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for you. So Officer Quarter Number 8 is a building that I rent often. And,
appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's really good. We enjoy it. But when we do that, we have more than, there's only room back there for a few cars. There's more people. Where will they park?
We are working on a long-term solution to extend the parking lot that currently serves the elementary school. There actually is a fair amount of space behind officers' quarters 7 and 8, and there's additional hard surface, not paved, but hard surface parking in the rear. And I think if you scoped it out, you'd see that the walking from those parking spaces would be the same, if not shorter, than a distance in parking on a paved Avenue D.
We just have some, most of ours are family-oriented
Yes.
activities. Have an elderly mom who's on a cane. It's easier to park on a paved street, walk up the sidewalk, and come in than the parking lot at an elementary school that's farther away, or some of the rutted-out parking in the back.
We would allow, and this happens now, we would allow vehicles to pull off of Washington Drive onto the rear of the fort. You could pull right up to the rear door, right there. People do that now, particularly for events where they have items to load and unload. So that access you could interpret that access as actually being improved. And the officers' quarters 1 at the far west end of the street, which is a sort of minor overnight accommodations, there's parking right next door to that. And then staff already in buildings 7 and 9 park in the rear.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. I'm going to close public comment. Anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll move to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? 6-0. All right, director's report.
Don't have anything to add today, unless you all have questions for staff.
No, sir. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. Monday, September 16th. In Council Chambers of McNeese Convention Center, 501 Rio Concho Drive. Do I have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 6-0.